Most dangerous animals do not want to eat you. Most dangerous animals attack humans for reasons that have nothing to do with hunger. They are defending territory, protecting young, responding to a perceived threat, or simply reacting to the bad luck of a surprise encounter that left them no option but to fight. When the attack is over, they leave. They do not consume. They do not drag you back to a den, a nest, or a lair for later. The encounter was not predation, it was conflict, and the distinction matters because it changes the nature of the danger entirely. A territorial animal wants you gone. A predatory animal wants you dead, and it wants you dead because it is hungry, and it has looked at you and seen not a threat, not an intruder, not a rival, but a meal. These are 13 wild animals that see humans as prey. Starting at number 13 is the Komodo dragon, the largest living lizard on Earth, and an animal that occupies a strange middle ground between ambush predator and opportunistic scavenger that tips, under the right circumstances, into deliberate human predation. Komodo dragons reach up to 10 feet in length and can weigh over 150 pounds, and they are the apex predators of the Indonesian islands they inhabit: Komodo, Rinca, Flores, and Gili Motong, where they hunt deer, wild boar, water buffalo, and essentially anything else made of meat that is slow enough or unlucky enough to be within striking distance. Komodo dragons do not chase their prey in prolonged pursuits. They ambush, lying motionless in tall grass or along trails for hours, sometimes days, waiting for a target to pass within range, and then lunging with a short, explosive burst of speed that covers the distance before the prey can react. The bite delivers a cocktail of venom that includes anticoagulants and compounds that induce shock and lower blood pressure, and the dragon then follows the bitten animal, sometimes for miles and sometimes for days, waiting for the venom and the resulting blood loss to weaken it enough for the dragon to begin feeding, which it does while the prey is sometimes still alive. Komodo dragons have attacked and killed humans on multiple occasions. At least 5 fatal attacks have been documented since 1974. And in several cases, the dragon initiated the encounter not as a defensive response, but as a predatory approach indistinguishable from the way it stalks deer. A park ranger on Komodo Island who had spent over 20 years working alongside the dragons described them as animals that do not distinguish between species when they are hungry. Noting that a Komodo dragon assessing a solitary human on a forest trail is running the same calculations it runs when it sees a deer: size, distance, vulnerability, and that the outcome of those calculations depends not on the dragon recognizing that you are human, but on whether you look like something it can successfully bring down. Number 12 is the African rock python, the largest snake in Africa, reaching lengths of up to 20 feet and weights exceeding 200 pounds. And one of the very few snake species on Earth that has killed and consumed adult human beings. African rock pythons are powerful constrictor snakes that hunt by ambush, lying coiled near game trails, water sources, and the edges of villages, and striking at prey that passes within range. Their natural diet includes antelope, warthogs, crocodiles, and monkeys, and their ability to consume prey significantly larger than their own head diameter means that a human, particularly a child or a small adult, falls within their prey profile. In 2002, a 10-year-old boy in Durban, South Africa, was killed and partially swallowed by an African rock python, and there are additional documented cases from Central and West Africa of pythons consuming children and, in at least one verified case, an adult woman. The python does not attack defensively in these cases. It attacks predatorily. The strike, the constriction, and the consumption follow the same sequence the snake uses on any prey item, and the human is processed with the same mechanical efficiency the snake would apply to a small antelope. A herpetologist who had studied African rock pythons in the wild for over 15 years described them as true generalist predators that assess prey by size, not by species, noting that a hungry African rock python encountering a solitary child near a riverbank is not making a mistake, it is hunting, and the child fits the parameters of a viable meal. At number 11 is the gray wolf, and while the gray wolf's reputation as a man-eater has been dramatically overstated by centuries of folklore, fairy tales, and cultural mythology. The historical record contains enough verified cases of predatory wolf attacks on humans to earn it a place on this list, not as a common threat, but as a species that has, under specific conditions, hunted and consumed humans as prey. Wolf attacks on humans are rare in modern North America and Europe, where wolf populations have been reduced, and where wolves have learned through generations of persecution to avoid human contact. But in parts of India, Central Asia, and historical Europe, wolves have been documented attacking and killing humans, primarily children and, in some cases, solitary adults, in patterns that wildlife biologists classify as predatory rather than defensive. The wolves of Turku, Finland, killed dozens of children between 1880 and 1881. The wolves of Hazaribagh, India, were documented killing over 100 children across multiple episodes in the 20th century. In these cases, the wolves did not attack because they were rabid, cornered, or defending territory. They attacked because they had habituated to human presence, lost their fear of people, and identified small humans as viable prey, a transition that wildlife biologists describe as prey switching, in which a predator incorporates a new species into its diet when traditional prey becomes scarce or when the new species becomes available and accessible. A wolf biologist who had spent 20 years studying wolf-human conflict described predatory wolf attacks as rare but real, noting that the conditions that produce them, food scarcity, habituation, loss of fear, and access to vulnerable targets, still exist in parts of the world, and that dismissing the wolf as harmless to humans is as inaccurate as treating it as a universal threat. Number 10 is the spotted hyena, the most common large predator in Africa, and an animal whose reputation as a scavenger has overshadowed a predatory capability that is, by the numbers, more impressive than that of the lion. Spotted hyenas hunt in coordinated packs and are responsible for killing up to 95% of the food they consume. They are not primarily scavengers but primarily predators that also scavenge opportunistically, and their prey includes zebras, wildebeest, antelope, and in documented cases, humans. In Ethiopia, attacks by spotted hyenas on humans, particularly on people sleeping outdoors, on children, and on individuals in urban fringe areas where hyena territories overlap with human settlements, have been documented with enough regularity to constitute a recognized public health problem. The city of Harar, Ethiopia, is famous for its population of urban hyenas that have coexisted with residents for centuries. But outside the context of this managed coexistence, hyenas in other parts of the country and across East Africa have attacked sleeping people, dragged individuals from tents and makeshift shelters, and consumed victims in attacks that are predatory by every behavioral definition. A wildlife researcher who studied hyena-human conflict in the Ethiopian highlands described the spotted hyena as an intelligent, adaptable predator that learns the patterns of whatever prey is available, noting that hyenas in areas where livestock and human proximity overlap had learned to associate human settlements not just with scavenging opportunities, but with vulnerable prey, sleeping people, unattended children, intoxicated individuals, and that the line between scavenging and predation had, in these populations, effectively disappeared. Number 9 is the leopard, the most adaptable of the big cats and the species most likely to develop into a deliberate serial man-eater when the conditions align. Leopards are solitary, nocturnal, and extraordinarily stealthy, and they thrive on the margins of human communities in a way that lions and tigers generally do not. They move through villages at night, they take livestock from pens, and they are comfortable operating in the dense cover and broken terrain that characterizes the interface between wild habitat and human settlement. When a leopard begins hunting humans, typically because it is injured, old, or has lost access to natural prey, it does so with a stealth and a precision that makes it, pound for pound, the most dangerous man-eater among the big cats. The leopard of Rudraprayag killed over 125 people in India between 1918 and 1926, entering homes at night and dragging victims from their beds with a silence that allowed it to operate undetected for nearly a decade. The leopard of Panar killed an estimated 400 people before it was shot by Jim Corbett in 1910. These animals were not attacking defensively. They were hunting, and they were hunting humans with the same techniques they would apply to any prey species: stalking at night, ambushing from cover, targeting isolated or sleeping individuals, and killing with a suffocating throat bite that produced death in near-total silence. A wildlife biologist who studied leopard-human conflict in India described the man-eating leopard as the most efficient human predator among the big cats, noting that leopards killed more people than lions or tigers on an annualized basis across their range, and that their comfort operating in human landscapes made them uniquely dangerous, because the attack could happen not in the wilderness but in your bedroom. If you're enjoying this countdown, you can get early access to all Loving Feral videos over on our Spotify channel. The link is in the description. Number 8 is the great white shark. And while the great white's reputation as a man-eater has been inflated by decades of film, media, and cultural mythology into something that significantly exceeds the statistical reality, the biological truth is that great whites do, in a meaningful subset of encounters, treat humans as prey rather than as objects of curiosity. Great whites are ambush predators that hunt marine mammals, seals, sea lions, and elephant seals by patrolling beneath their prey and launching high-speed vertical attacks from below, hitting the target with enough force to lift both animals out of the water. When a great white attacks a surfer, a swimmer, or a diver, it is frequently executing the same predatory sequence it uses on seals: approaching from below and behind, striking at high speed, and biting with a force and a commitment that is consistent with a predatory attack rather than an investigatory one. The distinction between the shark mistook you for a seal and the shark was hunting you is, from a biomechanical standpoint, largely irrelevant. The attack pattern is predatory regardless of whether the shark correctly identified the target species, and the injuries are delivered with the full mechanical commitment of a predator that intended to kill and consume. A marine biologist who studied great white feeding behavior off the coast of South Africa described the predatory attack as indistinguishable in execution from a seal hunt, noting that the approach vector, the strike speed, and the bite force were identical whether the target was a seal or a human, and that the shark's nervous system was not making a distinction between the two at the moment of the strike. The great white does not always eat humans it attacks. Many victims survive because the shark releases them after the initial bite, but the initial attack itself is, in behavioral terms, a predatory event. And the fact that the shark sometimes decides afterward that you are not a seal does not change the fact that, for the duration of the strike, it was hunting you. Number 7 is the Bengal tiger. And the tiger is the big cat with the longest, most well-documented, and most devastating history of deliberate human predation of any living species. Tigers have killed more humans than any other wild cat. The estimates for total historical human deaths attributable to tiger predation run into the hundreds of thousands. And individual man-eating tigers have achieved kill counts so extreme that they almost defy belief. The Champawat tiger, a female Bengal tiger that operated in Nepal and northern India in the late 19th and early 20th century, killed an estimated 436 people before being shot by Jim Corbett in 1907, making her the deadliest individual man-eater in recorded history. The tigers of Chowgar killed an estimated 64 people. The tiger of Sagur killed at least a dozen. In each case, the tiger was not attacking defensively or reacting to provocation. It was hunting humans as a primary food source, stalking villages, learning human movement patterns, and targeting individuals with a predatory intelligence that Corbett himself described as more cunning and more adaptive than anything he had encountered in decades of hunting dangerous game. Man-eating tigers typically develop the behavior after an injury: a broken canine, a porcupine quill lodged in a paw, a gunshot wound that has healed but left the tiger unable to catch its natural prey. And the transition from normal prey to human prey occurs because humans are slower, weaker, less alert, and more predictable in their movements than deer or wild boar, which makes them, from the tiger's perspective, easier to catch. A tiger biologist who studied man-eating behavior in the Sundarbans, the mangrove forests of Bangladesh and India where human-tiger conflict kills an estimated 30 to 100 people per year, described the man-eating tiger as a predator that has solved a problem: noting that the tiger does not switch to humans out of malice or preference, but out of practical necessity, and that once it learns how easy humans are to hunt compared to its normal prey, it rarely switches back. Number 6 is the lion. And while the lion's modern image has been softened by nature documentaries, conservation campaigns, and a cultural mythology that frames it as the king of the jungle in a way that emphasizes nobility over danger, the lion's historical and ongoing record of human predation is extensive, brutal, and unambiguous. The Tsavo man-eaters, 2 male lions that killed an estimated 35 to 135 railway workers in Kenya in 1898, are the most famous case, but they are far from the only one. The lions of Njombe, in what is now Tanzania, killed an estimated 1,500 people between 1932 and 1947, in what is considered the worst case of animal predation in recorded history. Individual man-eating lions continue to kill people across East and Southern Africa at rates that are difficult to quantify precisely, but that wildlife managers estimate in the hundreds per year across the continent. Lions hunt humans using the same cooperative, coordinated techniques they use on zebras and wildebeest. One or more lions drive the prey toward others waiting in ambush, and the kill is typically made with a suffocating bite to the throat or muzzle. In areas where lion habitat overlaps with human settlement, which is an expanding zone as human populations grow and wildlife corridors shrink, lions have learned that humans are available at night, that they are slower than zebras, and that villages located near park boundaries offer a prey source that requires less effort and less risk than hunting wild game. A lion researcher who had spent 2 decades studying human-lion conflict in Tanzania described the relationship as an evolving predatory dynamic, noting that lions in conflict zones were not simply wandering into villages by accident. They were learning to hunt there, teaching their cubs to hunt there, and incorporating human settlements into their territorial range as a reliable, low-risk food source. Number 5 is the Nile crocodile, and the Nile crocodile's predatory relationship with humans is so old, so consistent, and so deeply embedded in the species' behavioral ecology that it is not an aberration or a conflict. It is a feature. Nile crocodiles kill between 300 and 1,000 people per year across sub-Saharan Africa, and the vast majority of those kills are predatory. The crocodile does not attack defensively. It does not attack because it was startled or because you entered its territory. It attacks because it has been lying at the water's edge, motionless, for hours or days, specifically waiting for something to come to the water and present itself as a target, and when you do, washing clothes, filling water jugs, bathing, fishing, crossing a shallow ford. The crocodile's brain does not process you as a human being. It processes you as a warm, medium-sized mammal at the water's edge, which is the exact prey profile it has been optimized to exploit for 65 million years. Nile crocodiles learn human patterns. They return to locations where humans access the water on a regular schedule, and they position themselves at those locations in advance, which is not instinct, it is strategy. A crocodile biologist who studied Nile crocodile predation along the rivers of East Africa for over 20 years described the species as the only living predator that actively, strategically, and consistently hunts humans as a regular component of its diet, and noted that in communities along crocodile-inhabited rivers, the crocodiles were not simply occupying the water, they were managing it, learning it, and using their knowledge of human behavior to optimize their kill rate in a way that no other predator on this list replicates with such mechanical precision. Number 4 is the saltwater crocodile, the largest living reptile on Earth, and an animal that applies the same predatory logic as the Nile crocodile: ambush, patience, explosive strike, at a scale that makes the encounter unsurvivable. A mature male saltwater crocodile can exceed 20 feet in length and weigh over 2,000 pounds, and it hunts humans in the coastal rivers, estuaries, and tidal zones of northern Australia, Southeast Asia, and the western Pacific, with a frequency that, while lower in total numbers than the Nile crocodile, produces a higher per-encounter lethality, because the animal is simply too large for any human to survive once the bite has occurred. Saltwater crocodiles have been documented stalking fishing camps, returning to boat launches where they have previously seen humans, and targeting specific locations where people enter the water on a predictable schedule. Behavioral patterns that indicate not just opportunistic predation, but learned, location-specific hunting strategies built around human activity. In northern Australia, indigenous communities have coexisted with saltwater crocodiles for tens of thousands of years and have developed an intimate, deeply cautious understanding of the animal's predatory behavior that informs everything from where they fish to where they build their camps. A wildlife manager in the Northern Territory of Australia described the saltwater crocodile as an animal that is always hunting, noting that a saltwater crocodile in the water is never resting, never relaxed, and never not assessing everything within its strike range as a potential meal, and that humans enter that assessment the moment they approach the water's edge. Number 3 is the polar bear, the largest land carnivore on the planet, and the only bear species that actively, routinely, and deliberately hunts humans as prey. Grizzly bears attack defensively. Black bears avoid contact. The polar bear approaches you from downwind, stalking across open tundra with a patience that reflects an animal accustomed to waiting at seal-breathing holes for hours, and it closes the distance with a focus and a purpose that is unmistakably predatory. Polar bears are obligate carnivores. They cannot survive on plant material, they do not scavenge in the way that brown bears do, and they hunt with a deliberateness that is driven by genuine caloric necessity in one of the most food-scarce environments on Earth. When a polar bear encounters a human in the Arctic, a researcher, a hunter, a resident of a northern community, it does not assess the human as a threat and react. It assesses the human as a food source and hunts. In 2011, a polar bear stalked and killed a 17-year-old named Horatio Chappell during a wilderness expedition in Svalbard, approaching the camp over a period of time before attacking. In Churchill, Manitoba, residents leave car doors unlocked so that people being chased by polar bears can jump inside, and the town operates a polar bear holding facility where problem bears are detained before being relocated. A polar bear biologist who had spent over 20 years working in the Canadian Arctic described the species as the only bear that will hunt you the way it hunts a seal. Patiently, deliberately, and with no ambiguity about its intentions, adding that every encounter with a polar bear in the wild must be treated as a predatory encounter, because that is, from the bear's perspective, exactly what it is. Number 2 is the tiger. Returning to the list, because while the Bengal tiger appeared earlier as a historical man-eater, the tiger as a species, across all subspecies and all habitats, represents the single most prolific and most persistent large cat predator of humans in recorded history, and the problem is not historical. It is ongoing. In the Sundarbans mangrove forests of Bangladesh and India, a vast, tidal, densely vegetated landscape, where an estimated 400 to 500 Bengal tigers share territory with millions of people who depend on the forest for fishing, honey collecting, and wood gathering, tigers kill an estimated 30 to 100 people per year, and they do so predatorily. Sundarbans tigers are unusual among tiger populations in that man-eating is not limited to injured or elderly individuals. Healthy, prime-age tigers in the Sundarbans hunt humans regularly, and wildlife biologists believe this is because the unique conditions of the mangrove environment, dense cover, tidal flooding that forces humans into predictable travel corridors, and limited natural prey, have created a population of tigers that has incorporated humans into its prey base as a normal, rather than exceptional, food source. Honey collectors entering the Sundarbans wear face masks on the backs of their heads because tigers prefer to attack from behind, and the masks create the illusion of a face watching the tigers approach, which deters some attacks but not all. A tiger researcher who had studied the Sundarbans population for over 15 years described the tigers there as animals that have learned, generation after generation, that humans are available, accessible, and easier to catch than deer, and noted that the man-eating behavior in the Sundarbans is not aberrant, it is adaptive. It is successful, and it is being transmitted from mother to cub as a learned hunting strategy, which means it is not going away. And at number 1, the wild animal that sees humans as prey more consistently, more deliberately, and more successfully than any other species on Earth is the mosquito. And before you dismiss this as a technicality or a cheat, consider what predation actually means in biological terms. Predation is the act of one organism consuming another for sustenance. The mosquito does not kill you with a dramatic ambush or a crushing bite. It lands on your skin, inserts a needle-thin proboscis into your capillary bed, and feeds on your blood, your actual biological material, consumed for the mosquito's nutritional benefit and reproductive success. That is predation. It is parasitic predation rather than lethal predation, but the consequences are lethal on a scale that dwarfs every other animal on this list combined. Mosquitoes transmit malaria, dengue fever, Zika virus, yellow fever, chikungunya, West Nile virus, and lymphatic filariasis, and the collective death toll from these diseases exceeds 700,000 human lives per year. More than all other animal-caused deaths on the planet combined, including every shark, every crocodile, every big cat, every snake, and every bear. The mosquito does not see you as a threat. It does not see you as a rival. It sees you as a blood meal, a warm, carbon dioxide-emitting, lactic acid-producing food source that it has been evolutionarily optimized to locate, land on, and feed from with a precision that represents over 100 million years of predatory refinement. A medical entomologist who had spent 30 years studying mosquito-borne disease described the mosquito as the most successful predator of humans in the history of life on Earth, noting that mosquitoes have killed more humans than all wars, all famines, and all other predators in human history combined, and that they continue to do so every single day on every inhabited continent, with a relentlessness that no other predator can match. The mosquito does not look like a predator. It does not feel like a predator. It weighs about 2.5 milligrams, it lives for about 2 weeks, and it can be killed with a casual slap. But it has killed more of us than everything else on this list put together, and it is not finished. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. You can get early access to upcoming Loving Feral videos on our Spotify channel. The link is in the description. If you enjoyed this one, feel free to like, subscribe, or share it with someone who will never look at a mosquito the same way again. See you in the next one.